Hello, and thanks for joining today's webinar with Real Story Group. Today, we're going to focus on the rising role of DAM in the AI era. Certainly, AI is a hot button topic and has been for quite a while, but it's really top of mind lately for all of our customers here at Real Story Group. So our lead DAM analyst, Jarrod Gingras, is going to walk us through what that looks like and DAM's role in that. So he'll take us through most of today's presentation, but I do see a number of new faces or names, I should say, on the list today. So I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes to introduce you to Real Story Group or refresh your memory of Real Story Group. We're an industry analyst firm, and we focus exclusively on the MarTech space, right? So our goal is to help you in regards to the building blocks of your stack. So you'll see here our famous or perhaps infamous vendor map that shows all of our different coverage areas that all fall into the buckets of content, data, and decisions. So today we're going to focus on the purple line, which will be digital asset management. What's unique about Real Story Group in the analyst space, we've yet to come across another firm that really adheres to the level of independence that we have within our evaluations. We never work for the vendors we cover in any way, shape, or form. We don't speak at their conferences or write white papers for them. Our goal is to sit exclusively on your side of the table as you're making these important choices in which of these providers that you should be going with. So you'll never really hear us say, you know, there's a best vendor or there's a worst vendor in a particular space, but rather what's going to be the right fit for what it is that you're trying to do. And so Jarrod and Tony and the rest of the team here certainly takes a pull no punches approach in highlighting what these vendors do well and where they fall short. A few different ways that you can engage with us. Our traditional model has been, folks will subscribe to our research, get some advisory with Jarrod and the team to make a selection in one particular technology area. Over the last few years, though, more folks are thinking a lot more holistically about their stacks and how all these pieces fit together. So folks like that will come to us and say, hey, we want to get access to all of your research and get more advisory time with you so we can make these broader decisions about our stack. So they leverage our stack advisory services. And then a number of those folks actually participate in our MarTech Stack Leadership Council, which meets quarterly. It's a completely vendor-free group that gets together to share ideas, talk about shared frustrations, really get an opportunity to network with your peers and hear from each other directly. That group meets quarterly, and we're getting together again in November. So if you're ever interested in any of these options, you can always reach out to myself or to Jarrod, and we'd be happy to share some additional insight for you. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jarrod and take it through the rest of today's presentation. Jarrod?
Thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for taking a few minutes. I think it's at this point in the proceedings, as you gave the intro about Real Story Group, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about a book that we've written in the past, The Right Way to Select Technology, and our ongoing DAM research that is definitely contributing to what you're going to hear about today, but also a new item that we have been working on over the last few months. Tony Byrne, the founder of Real Story Group, and myself have been recording a multitude of podcasts for a podcast we're calling The Real Story on MarTech. So if you haven't checked that out, I invite you to check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I wouldn't be a podcaster if I didn't say like, subscribe, share with your friends, do all that kind of good stuff, and we'd really appreciate it. All right, we're going to talk today about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, and I know many of you as well. And because I over the last several decades, I've been focusing quite specifically on digital asset management and kind of the evolution of the marketplace in general, with the goal of helping people make the right decision for what you all are trying to do with regards to managing assets. And I think Real Story Group, we were one of the first firms to say, hey, DAM needs a seat at the marketing technology table. And for years, we've been talking about this rising profile of DAM. It started out as maybe this system that was over in the corner that people put assets in, but when they wanted to go find them, it was more like this library that they'd go search and then pull them down and then go do something else with them. And we, for a long time, advocated, hey, no, this is more important. This should be, integrated in your marketing technology stack. And we made a lot of progress over the last decade in particular. I think everyone has kind of recognized that DAM is really important and deserves a seat at the table. But then over the last few years, we had a little bit of a disruption in our marketplace. We're all talking about AI, and AI, by no means am I an AI hater. I think it's going to do a lot of good things. But I also am a really pragmatic analyst, and I have to be realistic about what I'm seeing in this marketplace too, because the kind of downside of this AI trend is that I've heard some, let's call it negative or kind of doomsday-ish type thinking as it relates to AI. Everyone thinks that AI is just going to solve everything for them and wipe out all the work that we've done, over the last few decades when we think about technology and writ large, but also marketing, but specifically marketing technology and even DAM technology. And I've had some people who I think very highly of in the DAM industry tell me, oh, this is the end of DAM. AI is just going to take care of everything. We just sprinkle some AI on it. It's going to figure it all out. I don't think that's going to happen. And here today, I put together a list of 6 really big trends that I've been seeing that I think really indicate that the role of DAM or the profile of DAM in many of our organizations is actually going to rise because of AI. I think it's going to become more important than ever. So this isn't game over for DAM. I think it's only just the beginning. So let's talk about some of these reasons. Number one, it's this thing that we call the content supply gap. Why do we talk about the content supply gap so often? Because I think as marketers or really anyone who works for any kind of organization that's trying to serve an audience, our goal is always to get the right content to the right person at the right time. We're trying to build the right experiences for people to spur them on to do some sort of action, right? So if the goal is right content to the right person at the right time, the dirty little secret here is that in order to do that at the level of granularity that many of our organizations think we need to get to, it's really hard to produce enough content to fuel that beast, right? So everyone's talking about omni-channel personalization and next best action efforts or next best experience efforts. But in order to do that, you need a ton of content, right? And we've been talking about personalization and NBA and NBX and omni-channel for so long, but they often fail. We see them fail all the time because for a variety of reasons, but one of the big reasons is we can't feed the beast with enough content. So I think a lot of content people are looking at AI, particularly Gen AI, as a solution to this problem. And they're saying, hey, we can point our AI engines at our repositories and do creative work faster than our person-led teams could ever do before. And that's really exciting for many organizations, right? Being able to finally, see this goal through of some omni-channel personalization. But just because we can produce things at a faster rate and at a larger scale, doesn't mean we don't need to manage that content. So the big question that I'm seeing people ask, often too late, is where do we put all this new content that we're creating? Where do we put all these variants? And how do we manage what's happening there? With increased volumes comes increased management challenges. What happens when you need to find out where all of the variants of this content were seen across the world, and what channels were they seeing? How do we pull them all down at once? How do we measure what's successful and what's not successful? It's a big management challenge, and for many organizations, the way we're going to do that is back to the basics of content management and asset management in particular. Reason number 2, I want to talk about this concept of foundational AI loops, but I want to do so in 2 contexts. Number 1, I want to talk about sources, and then in the next reason, we're going to talk about destinations. But first, let's talk about what a AI feedback loop is. So as analysts, we like to try to make sense of this AI world in a variety of different ways. We like to put different solutions into boxes, and to date, we've come up with 3, maybe 4 categories of AI that we're seeing. Certainly Gen AI we've talked about. we've also talked about decisioning AI and insights AI. So insights AI, think of that as the ability to uncover potential opportunities, decisioning AI, what to do with that opportunity, and then generative AI to create those variants that we're talking about. But it's not just good enough to think about that in a linear respect. I think this is where a lot of the agents come in that I'm sure many of you are thinking about. The best agents that are out there are helping you with this first part, but then creating a loop where your AI engines are learning, right? They're measuring how your content did, it's learning and adapting, and it's giving you better prompts, and it's this constant loop that's going around and around it as your engine learns and gets better and better over time. So if that's what we're talking about, the ideal foundational loop for our organizations, we need to allow our engines to learn off the right content. And I think this is another area that gets brushed aside oftentimes and say, oh, AI will just figure out which content to learn off of. I don't think that's good enough for many of us, if not any of us. I think we need to have our models learning off not just everything we have, but a curated data set. Because let's be honest, not all content is equal, right? And I'll give you an example of one of the clients that we've worked with, a major healthcare provider who really wants to get into the business of predicting diagnoses before before people actually come into the hospital and say that something's wrong. They want to get ahead of things really early in the process. So what they're doing is they're using their DAM to not just point AI at every single scan that they have in their system, but they're being smart about it and saying, hey, we want to look at this demographic in this region of the world, in this age group, this whatever, and have AI make some conclusions off of that. So it's access control, not just for humans, but in this case, it's access controls for machines. And then there's this whole other notion, and this can take a variety of different flavors, depending on the use case we're talking about. But there's a real fundamental content management construct at play here, where once our engines start learning off of our content, there's probably a pretty good use case or reason for you to say, well, we want to know what content that learned off of, right? So we want some sort of audit trail. An audit trail used to mean for many of us, like, which person saw what when, or which person edited something when. In this case, maybe we want to see which learning model saw what content when to create some conclusions off that, or and by conclusions I mean insights, decisioning, or even new content. And we want to be able to trace back, how did we get to there? And that's a powerful content management use case that we're describing there. So sources of content are going to be critical here, and again, not just a big bucket of content is always the right thing. We might want to be able to slice and dice our content in ways to be able to provide the right access to the right machines to be able to make some decisions on our behalf. So here's the other side of the coin here. When we talk about those foundational AI loops, not only do we need sources, we need destinations. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think in order to do anything in terms of experience management, when we're creating experiences, reaching the right person at the right time, how do we know we reached the right person at the right time? We need some data on that. We need to understand how certain content actually performed in a cross-channel environment. So in order to really make sense of that, we can't have a bunch of analytics in our channel-specific systems, like our web system or our social publishing system or our email system. We need to port all that data back to live side by side with my assets to truly inform future decisions. We talked earlier about how not all content is created equal. Well, how do we tell our AI engines about which content is actually better than others? Well, we can't do that unless we have data and content living close together. So a place for this content and data to live together is that destination that we're talking about. And I think this is where it gets really interesting as we look towards the future. And I don't think anyone solved this problem or cracked this nut just yet, but I envision a world, we sometimes call it the DAM 4.0 world, where our content systems, when they have the right data living side by side with it in a single repository, if you have that the right content and the right data, then your systems can be smarter. Your systems can then start to bubble up which content is most relevant at a certain time, whether that's a yearly cadence or a quarterly cadence or something else. And maybe new content, new generative content is suggested to you and your team, saying, hey, based on past performance, we think that this type of asset is going to reach this audience that you all are trying to get to do something, whether that's buy clothing or buy a car or go to the hospital or buy insurance or whatever that action that you're trying to get them to take. One of the byproducts of this destinations and sources conversation, I think, is, some of you might have heard me talk about this, because this is something that we've talked about for years and years and years, but how many of you have farmed out a lot of your creative work to agencies versus how many of you are bringing creative agencies in-house? And, over the last couple of decades, we've seen this pendulum, swing back and forth. And I can tell you from where I sit right now, we've seen a massive swing of this pendulum back in-house, because I think and AI has really been the fuel of this, right? Because people are saying, so much of my content is with my agencies. If I want to build that proprietary base for in-house Gen AI or in-house AI-based decisioning and insights gathering, I need more control of that content. So we're seeing, because of that pendulum swing to in-house agencies, we're seeing more fundamental dams being brought into internal situations, so that you not only have control of the creative workforce, you have control of the creative content in all its phases. Reason number 4 is, of course, risk management. And I think one of the biggest challenges to AI is particularly these loops, these AI loops that we talk about, is it's scary to give up control. And many organizations, particularly when we talk about agentic AI, we get nervous about giving agents too much control, and without humans in the loop necessarily, too much control of how they're running our campaigns or making decisions on our behalf. And so this is, again, it really, for many organizations, they're saying, okay, we need to get on board this train. This is a very real phenomenon. But if we're going to give up some control, we need to place a premium on traceability of versions, like, again, who saw what when, tracking where assets are being used on which channels. We need to be able to pull things back quickly if things aren't working or inappropriate. I've seen a lot of questionable brand decisions that AI engines make today, and I'm sure that's going to get better over time. But as we sit here today, AI engines don't always follow brand guidelines to a T. So I think having some stricter controls in place, I think that's really critical for many organizations. And when it comes down to copyright and license restrictions, those are so critical to so many organizations, and not adhering to them can lead to some pretty massive fines. So having those rules being managed by a traditional technology and having a AI play within those parameters is a much better approach than saying, okay, here's all our rules, AI, I hope you follow them correctly. I think many organizations are realizing you need a blend of both. Reason number 5 is a bit of a surprising one to some. It certainly was to me. I didn't see this one coming, admittedly, but this is around sustainability efforts turning to content. And I know many of you work for large companies. I'd be willing to bet you all have some sustainability efforts regarding how waste is disposed of in your organization, and what happens in the cafeteria. But with the advent of AI, we've seen some leadership at many organizations start to question the extreme volumes of content that are being created with generative AI. And so because of that, we've seen a renewed focus on things like asset deduplication. Like people say, well, why are we storing that image, that photo, that video hundreds, if not thousands of times? We gotta streamline this as much as possible. We've also seen a renewed focus on things like auto archival and deletion policies and processes. So, right. So if you think about it, this is the true digital asset management as it relates to asset lifecycle. You know, we don't always create things so it lives forever necessarily. Some stuff we want to live as long as possible, but other stuff doesn't need to. And there maybe should be a life cycle where things are sunsetted or deleted, or at least put to a different part of storage that it might not be so costly and impactful. And so we're seeing a rise in new dashboards being added to some systems to be able to track storage and energy usage. And, you know, as part of our selection processes, we've seen our clients ask for inclusions to their RFPs and RFIs to find vendor partners who are sustainably driven, and that's become a larger and larger focus. And I think as these volumes continue to grow and AI becomes more prevalent, particularly Gen AI, I think we're going to see this become a increased priority for many buyers going forward. Finally, number 6, let's talk about DAM or content as a building block of experiences, and we've been doing that for many years. But in this case, we're going to talk about agents. I think agents is the biggest buzzword of the last few months, at least. Everyone's talking about agents, trying to figure out where agents are right for them. And the way I like to think about it is agents are going to help us build experiences. In some cases, they're experiences in and of themselves, but I don't think we need to think about them in a way that's that different than we've been thinking about building experiences in the past. Because I think at its core, experiences are, as we talked about earlier, getting the right content and information, marrying up that with the right data, putting the right rules in place and when you have all those things come together, that's an experience. So when I talk about content information, I'm talking about images and video and audio and copy and text. Maybe it's user generated content, maybe it's product information. When we talk about data, it's customer data, but it's also customer activity or maybe even product data. And from a decisioning standpoint, there's different display and delivery rules. All these things, again, come together to create experiences, and this is what agents want too. They want to be able to pull from the right content, married up with the right data, and have the right rules to be able to help someone through a journey. And I think, again, this is not, for many people, AI agents are scary, but I don't think they're that different from how marketers usually think. However, we're seeing a very real phenomenon in today's day and age is that for those organizations who have so much content stuck in channel specific systems, so much content, so much data and decisions stuck in channel specific systems, particularly like web content management or e-commerce or marketing automation tools or social publishing tools or even CRM or type tools, I think those are the organizations that are struggling to provide the agents that they're trying to build with the right content in the right context. Where I've seen organizations come to a realization that, you know, having content and data and decisions trapped within these systems, like this bottom layer here, I think they're finding that that's not good enough, and we need to operate differently if we're going to get to where we want to go. So I think there's been a renewed effort on putting the right foundational services in place when it comes to content and information, data and decisioning, much more foundationally and omni-channel. So if you look at that leftmost box, that's where DAM comes into play. And your DAM is going to continue to evolve. Maybe your DAM is just assets, or maybe it's even bigger. Maybe it's evolved into a DAM 3.0 type system where it's more of an omni-channel content platform. But regardless, you're managing assets or content through a life cycle at a foundational omni-channel in an omni-channel way to provide consistent content throughout the enterprise. That's a big difference, and I think the organizations that have invested in this foundational services are going to be the organizations that are best prepared to take advantage of these AI agents that they're trying to build. What does this mean from a practical level? I think we've been seeing this trend for quite some time, where for many of us, DAM has meant a search bar, or like a Google-like search bar, or a navigation tree, or some way of or some faceted view, or where we can drill down to find content that we know exists. I think this movement is going to continue to go to a place where, in many of our organizations, DAM is headless, or dare I say invisible, right? And so I think these API first architectures are going to win out, and many of your colleagues who are creating experiences are going to be pulling from approved repositories without even necessarily knowing what the DAM looks like under the hood. That's been a trend that's happening, and I think this is going to get accelerated when we talk about agents, because the agents are not going to go to the DAM and do a search within a Google search like interface. We're just going to bubble up the right content to these agents so that they can take advantage of that, right? So in that case, DAM might be invisible, but as long as we're managing that content correctly, we can be certain that we're providing the right content for these agents to use and learn off of. A challenge of this time in this world, as we sit here in late 2025, that I'm seeing is, for better or for worse, vendors, and it's not just DAM vendors, but I'm going to pick on DAM vendors a little bit, but it's not just them, but every vendor feels like they have to have an AI story, right? And they probably do. Let's be honest. When they give their demo, they're going to demo their AI capabilities. So when we think about AI today, oftentimes we're thinking about AI as a feature of every single technology vendor that we have in our stack. I think that's a mistake. It concerns me a bit, because I think it's a distraction. I think it's a distraction for the technology vendors, particularly the DAM vendors, because they're thinking about, oh, how can we use AI to help the tagging process, or how can we use AI to do more Gen AI within my system, within my closed system. I don't mean to say that those things don't have value. They absolutely have value. What I'm saying is, I think we're making a mistake if we don't think about the bigger picture. The agents of the future are not going to live within just DAM, or just CDPs, or just journey orchestration tools, or just web content management systems. I think the agents that are going to be the most effective are the ones that are pulling the right content, the right data, and the right decisions across a whole bunch of different applications, but it's done at a foundational level, not as a feature within the system itself solely. All right, so to wrap up, here are my 6 reasons your DAM is even more important in the age of AI than ever before. Number 1, there's a content supply gap, and your DAMs or content is going to become more and more important. We're gonna create content at volumes that we've never seen before, but we need a place to put it. That's going to be your DAM. Sources for having these AI engines learn and be able to segment slices of which they can learn off of, that's going to be your DAM. A place for you to put this content married up with data, that's going to be your DAM. Finding better ways to manage content volumes that is not hurting the planet, or let's be honest, a way to get probably a better attention of your leadership here, not burn up millions and millions of dollars of storage. You're going to need to manage your content in smarter ways, because you're doing it at a larger scale and at volumes we've never seen before. We're going to manage risk better. That's going to be your DAM. And content as a true building block of the agent experiences that I know that we're all thinking about. You need to have your content managed in the right way, and that starts with your DAM. So I hope this all gives you hope. It gives me hope. I see a lot of DAM people being discouraged about AI, but I'm sitting here saying, no, if anything, the profile is rising. You need a seat at the MarTech table. If you're a DAM person, this is massive. Don't think about AI just in terms of the system itself. Think about how you can power the experiences, the omni-channel experiences that your enterprise is trying to create. So with that, I want to thank everyone for taking some time today. We really appreciate it as always. Feel free to reach out with any questions, concerns, suggestions. As always, we love to hear it. And as Scott alluded to before, we've been doing a ton of research in the AI space. We've been covering the DAM marketplace for quite some time. So if anyone's interested, go download a sample of our DAM research. But you can also check out our AI for marketing research. And I'm going to give you a sneak preview where we're just about to publish some AI agents research that's really, really cutting edge and exciting. We're really taking a pulse of this rapidly changing marketplace. And I encourage you to check that out as well. But of course, check out the research, but also check out the podcast, and don't ever hesitate to reach out and stay in touch. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.